The attic was cold, silent, but for the soft crackle of a dying breeze against the mansion's old walls. Ethan and Lily stood before the mirror, an object too large, too out of place, and too alive for its own good. It loomed like an ancient sentinel, its surface gleaming unnaturally, reflecting their wide-eyed faces in a twisted, distorted way that made their skin crawl. The mirror was monstrous, a towering relic with a frame that seemed to be alive with intricate carvings of twisting vines and serpentine shapes. Its glass shimmered, though the light in the attic was dim. Ethan's reflection blinked a moment too late. Lily's lips parted in shock. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. "What is this thing?" Lily whispered, stepping back. Her voice seemed swallowed by the room, muffled, like the mirror itself was drinking the sound. Ethan hesitated, his hand hovering near the glass. "I don't know," he said, his voice trembling, "but I have to find out." The moment his fingertips brushed the surface, the glass rippled like water disturbed by a pebble. A cold pulse traveled up his arm, and the reflection of the room wavered, bending and twisting unnaturally. Lily gasped, but before she could move, the mirror responded, pulling them both into its depths. The world shattered around them as they were yanked through the mirror's surface. Colors swirled in a vortex of chaos, a swirling black hole pulling them into a shadowy void. Their bodies twisted unnaturally as the force of the pull sucked them deeper, faster. They screamed, but their voices were lost in the deafening rush of air. They hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath from their lungs. As they gasped for air, they realized they were no longer in the attic. The mirror behind them had transformed into a black, glassy wall, cold and impenetrable. They were trapped. The room, if it could be called that, was a nightmare version of the attic. The familiar objects were there, but everything was wrong. The angles were distorted, the air thick with a creeping, unnatural dread, and the light was sickly, casting long, twisting shadows. "We're not in the mansion anymore," Lily stammered, her voice shaking. Ethan didn't respond, his gaze locked on the warped reflection surrounding them. "Let's get out of here," he whispered, eyes wide with fear. As they stepped cautiously into the hallway, the walls seemed to pulse with life. Shadows crawled, twisting in ways shadows shouldn't, moving independently from the faint light. Faces flickered in the darkness, there for only a second before melting into the walls. Every step was accompanied by the creeping sensation of being watched by something that shouldn't exist. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as though they were walking through a heavy fog of terror. And then came the whispers. They began softly at first, distant, like voices buried deep within the walls. "We need to find a way out," Lily urged, her voice barely more than a terrified breath. The whispers grew louder as they walked, though the words were incoherent, like a chant spoken in an ancient tongue. The corridor ahead twisted and warped, the floor rippling as though it were alive. The once straight path was now a nightmare maze, its end obscured by shadow. At the far end, a door appeared, standing like a black sentinel. It was cracked and ancient, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with a faint, sickly light. The door groaned as they pushed it open, and inside, a silvery light bathed the room in a ghostly glow. In the center of the room stood another mirror, identical to the one that had dragged them into this hellish realm. But this one was different. Its surface was perfect, glowing with an eerie brilliance. The walls around it were covered in strange, ancient runes, each one pulsating, as if alive with malevolent energy. Ethan and Lily approached cautiously, but this time, when they saw their reflections, they weren't smiling. There was no grin, no expression at all. Their reflections were simply shadows, vague, dark outlines of their human forms, standing in perfect, eerie stillness. Faceless, hollow, and silent. Goosebumps ran up their arms, and Lily took a step back. "That's us," she whispered, her voice barely a breath. Ethan stared, transfixed by the unnatural reflection. Suddenly, the mirror cracked and shattered, exploding outward with a thunderous crash. Glass flew everywhere, but instead of simply shattering, the darkness behind the glass seemed to ooze forward. From the void emerged two towering shadow figures, their forms shifting like liquid smoke. They were faceless, their eyes glowing faintly with an unnatural, haunting light. These were not reflections. They were something else, something that had been watching them from the very moment they touched the mirror. Lily's scream tore through the room as the figures advanced. "Run!" Ethan shouted, grabbing her hand as they bolted from the room. The hallways twisted around them as they fled, the world distorting into a labyrinth of terror. The shadow figures glided after them, silent but relentless. Their glowing eyes were like beacons of fear, burning into the siblings' backs. Every corner turn seemed to stretch farther, the walls warping and elongating, trapping them in a twisted, nightmarish loop. The air was frigid, each breath a stab of ice in their lungs. Time itself seemed to stretch as they ran, every second feeling like an eternity. Ethan pulled Lily up a flight of stairs, the only thing in this shadowy realm that seemed to lead anywhere. The staircase spiraled upward, bathed in an unnatural light that seemed to promise some kind of escape. Below, the shadow figures halted at the base of the stairs, watching, waiting. Their presence was a silent threat, lingering in the cold darkness. As Ethan and Lily climbed, the shadows receded, but their fear remained. Each step forward felt heavier, the light above distant and unreachable. The air grew warmer, and the oppressive darkness began to fall away. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were not truly free. Not yet. He glanced back, one last time, at the figures below. They stood motionless, their glowing eyes fixed on him, a promise of the horror that awaited them if they dared to look into the mirror again. At the top of the staircase, the light enveloped them, and the shadows below vanished. For now,